Hello there everyone, how are you all doing? Welcome back to the channel. My name is GenericReviewChannel, and I am going to be giving you a review today of a beautiful game that is so impactful to not only my life and my interests, but also gaming as a whole. But before I do that, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all that beautiful stuff, show your support because it means a lot to me. This game that we are reviewing today is Super Mario 64. Now, Super Mario 64 is considered by many to be a masterpiece, and its influence on gaming is just huge. So, my journey with this game began with me as a kid playing the original on an emulator pretty much, because I didn't have access to a N64, because, you know, I just didn't grow up in that era. But playing it on an emulator gave me an appreciation for one of the best games ever made. I also played the DS remake, which is also pretty good, enjoyed that, but I've never actually completed the game before. I was a little kid, I wasn't good at it, you know, say what you will, but with the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection coming out, I decided to finally get into it, and today I'm just here to give you my thoughts, tell you what I think about one of the most iconic games ever made. And before you ask, yes, I will indeed be reviewing the other two games in this package at some point. So stay tuned for that. So as far as the gameplay, the mechanics in this really just set the ground, you know, paved the way for 3D Mario going forward. It was very much the genesis of this entire franchise, or sub-franchise I guess you'd call it, I'm not really sure. But the tricks Mario can pull off here are just incredibly fun, and surprisingly fully realized. This game really did come out of the gate just ready to go. It pulled no punches with that. The only thing is, Mario's controls can be slippery, and oftentimes you'll go one way only for him to pretty much go the opposite way, and it costs you lives. You die. This also really isn't helped by the camera, which is incredibly janky sometimes. It's like, it kind of has a mind of its own, and it's not great, you know? Mario's combat and movement arsenal really helps to kind of rectify the slippery controls, however, because it pretty much makes the game way more forgiving than you initially thought once you get the hang of them. You can sort of compensate for the fact that the game is a little bit slippery and whatever by just kind of having a few extra maneuvers up your sleeve to sort of balance that out and counter that. Now, something that a lot of people really like to pile onto in this game is the swimming controls. The swimming controls admittedly aren't amazing. Like, it's a little bit hard to sort of get the hang of and to keep going where you're going, but they're really not as bad as a lot of people actually say. I found them playable, and I found them to be something that you can kind of acquire skill at. The wing cap actually, funnily enough, is more difficult than the swimming controls due to the really iffy camera and pretty much a lack of depth perception when you're using it. I don't know why people don't really talk about this. Maybe they just really like flying in Mario and were sort of blinded by nostalgia goggles, but I found that to be a little bit more, you know, finicky than swimming. So yeah, take that as you will. And I know I was just kind of, you know, having a go at it earlier, but the wing cap is still really fun to use once you kind of get some practice in, and then it becomes like one of the just really awesome things that's very distinct about this game, I suppose. Right from the get-go, when you jump into this game, the overworld that you enter is pretty much just the perfect hub. It's this place where you can jump around, explore. There's nothing really dangerous in the early stages of it. There are some little weird things here and there, but Peach's Castle is pretty much just a playground, a sandbox, somewhere that you can kind of practice and hone maneuvers, and being dropped right into it is a very smart piece of game design. It's also an incredibly fun place to explore and uncover secrets in. You know, you can discover extra levels and places and this and that, and it's all very fun to sort of do, and pretty much make the world larger for you to navigate. Something I love about this game is the fact that the world dash system found in 2D Mario's prior to this is actually replaced by a handful of missions in a deceptively smaller number of worlds. And I say deceptively because it creates this idea of revisiting and sort of almost remixing and going into the world with a different objective on your mind, and the mission names even kind of hint at that, and I love that. I think that's such a good idea. The only thing that really hasn't aged well about this, especially compared to newer 3D Marios like Super Mario Odyssey and such, is the fact that you get booted out after receiving a star. It hasn't aged well, but it allows you to experience each level for longer, I suppose, come back to it and do the same little sections here and there, and sort of just appreciate the fact that it's all very much living and breathing. And I think something amazing about this game is the fact that the creators could have just done, you know, platforming in 3D, but instead they opted to create living playgrounds, places that you can go to and go, this is a world, or this is a section of a world that is very much lived in, but also very Mario and very off-kilter in its presentation and its ecosystem. This less linear approach means you connect with each world more than just jumping on enemies to reach a flagpole, essentially. You form a bond, the world becomes a character. Earlier levels focus more on exploration, while later levels delve into traditional platforming while still cramming in secrets and diverging paths. So as much as I said earlier that, you know, there's not a lot of platforming areas in this game, they actually do pile up later on in the game, and there's sort of sections that you go into where there's a lot less ground for you to rely on, but it's still very much open, and it's still very much, there's places to go, and it's fun to explore. Many levels focus more on verticality than previous games, which usually focused on horizontal completion. Something I love about that idea is the fact that you kind of go up. Something like tick-tock clock, something of that nature, means that you are pretty much doing a whole different dimension to what Mario platformers normally have in them. It's also thematically similar to traditional Mario, but in a good way. It's pretty much the closest thing you could get to just Mario in 3D. It retains its spirit, and I think that's such an important part of how they transitioned Mario into 3D. It also pulls the rug out with really inventive aesthetics, like beyond just, you know, oh, you go to the snow world, the fire world, the grass world, the this world, the that world, like in Mario. It really just sort of puts a spin on that with stuff like Tick-Tock Clock and Tiny Huge Island coming to mind, which are just incredible to explore, and the premise behind them is so good. The 3 cap blocks that you can discover in the castle are also amazing because they pretty much open various worlds up more than they were for you to backtrack through and solve puzzles. It's great because it pretty much encourages backtracking, which is something important about creating these worlds that you come back to time and time again, and making them not just something you go from A to B and finish. It's very non-linear, there's a lot to do, and it'll keep completionists very busy as well. It's also worth mentioning that these switches are better than those in Mario World, because they don't just change the placement of blocks like in Mario World. The switches that you would hit were pretty much just, oh, you hit this switch, now all the red blocks are filled in. Okay, now I can jump on them. What this actually does in this game is changes the physical traits and attributes of Mario himself for exploration, i.e. the wing cap, the metal cap, the invisibility cap. They actually change his physicality, and I think that's really cool because it essentially means it's you changing, not the environment around you. Overall, it's a complete blast to collect stars in. I love it. I love going to these worlds, collecting all the stars. It's amazing. Admittedly, the graphics here have aged horrendously, but you really can't hold that against it because they obviously are good for their time. I understand it, and the charm of Mario still manages to shine through here. Even things though like color palettes and such for this game just make me scratch my head and wonder, what were they thinking? Like the bright and sort of muddy mixture of like the grass color, the things around you, it can be hideous at times. There's also some really iconic and well-produced musical themes peppered throughout this game, and they're just so timeless. Like they're synonymous with Mario, essentially. The only thing is that the same music and assets being used on similar levels such as Tall Tall Mountain and Womp Forest, it's somewhat cool because these are almost like remixes, and obviously it helped to cut down on development time and whatnot, and they use it well, but it somewhat disappoints me because they're so similar. Now, as far as the All-Stars version of the game that I played, there's a few little things here and there, nothing major, but some neat little upgrades that kind of help it to come together a bit nicer, because some texture touch-ups make it look noticeably cleaner than it was on the N64. It's a lot less gritty. But at the same time, that also kind of means that it brings right to the forefront some of the more ugly areas of the game that weren't really as smooth as you thought they were, even though no one really thinks this game is smooth. And I mean, 64 being the only one in this collection in 4x3 is fine, despite all the complaints, but the fact that in portable it doesn't actually fill the whole screen is really ugly and very noticeable, especially when you consider the fact that the Switch already has like quite a noticeable bezel, and therefore it's just too much cut out. Overall though, it runs very smoothly and better than the original, you know, as it should. Super Mario 64 does indeed begin to show its cracks almost 25 years on, but these cracks will never ruin the experience, and this is what makes it a masterpiece. And yes, I still think that after playing this game again, because finally finishing it, which is something that I never actually did as a child, made me feel so complete. It made me feel like I experienced something, a touchstone, a cultural touchstone. There's no other word for it. The influence it has is massive, and as a game in a vacuum, even if you wanted to take it as that, even on its own, it's still incredible to play, and you'll have a blast. The touch-ups in this port only make the game better. However, it was already near perfect to begin with. I gotta give this a 9.5 out of 10. Jank and all, it's just a lovable experience. Thank you so much for watching. You made it to the end of the video, congratulations. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, go to the Instagram, do all that stuff, yada yada yada. And I'll see you next time for whatever game I end up reviewing. I'm not really sure yet, but I'll put that in the title card. See ya.